Hello viewers, we will be presenting our project Coolants Are Cool. The purpose of our experiment is to find a non-toxic but effective coolant for a cooling system. The reason for this is our purpose is because of the ammonia leak on the International Space Station in 2023. If this leak occurred inside of the station, people could have been severely harmed. To prevent this from happening, you would need a non-toxic coolant. However, the coolant must be effective to cool the space station. For this experiment, we researched propylene glycol, which has a low freezing point of negative 60 degrees Celsius, making it a practical candidate for the cooling system. It is also non-toxic. Another suitable candidate that we researched was isopropyl alcohol, which also has a low freezing point. As said previously, this research is motivated by the ammonia leak on the ISS in 2023. We believe that this project can prove our purpose because our purpose is to find an effective coolant for the cooling system. And our experiment tests different non-toxic coolants to see which one is the most effective. The hypothesis that we tested is that if isopropyl alcohol, propylene glycol, and water are sent through a cooling system, then it will be found that propylene glycol will be the most effective because it will cool down the most and warm up the least compared to isopropyl alcohol and water. Here are our materials that we used for the experiment. This includes safety equipment, gear, and cleanup materials. This is our procedure for the experiment. As you can see, we cooled each of the coolants, propylene glycol, isopropyl alcohol, and water, and poured each of them through some tubing to stand for our cooling system. These are the variables for our experiment. The independent variable is the types of coolants used. This dependent variable is the temperature after the coolants have gone through. The constant variables are how long each coolant was cooled and the amount for each coolant. Our observations were that the propylene glycol had a higher viscosity than the other liquids. The test tubes had a condensation on them after being cooled, and the propylene glycol left a trail behind in the tubing. Our data showed that each of the liquids on average stayed from 20 degrees Celsius to 22 degrees Celsius before we began. Then after cooling for 5 minutes, the three coolants cooled on average of 7 to 9 degrees Celsius. After being sent through the cooling system, the three coolants warmed up around 15 to 16 degrees Celsius. The data shows that the isopropyl alcohol cooled down the most at 63.31% and warmed up the least with a 24.26 decrease from the first temperature, making it the best coolant. Also, the data shows that water cooled down the least by 51.83% and warmed up the most with a 19.51% decrease from the temperature in most trials. The hypothesis is if propylene glycol, isopropyl alcohol, and water are sent through a cooling system, then it would be found that propylene glycol will be the most effective because it will cool down the most and warm up the least compared to isopropyl alcohol and water. This hypothesis was proven false in the experiment, with isopropyl alcohol being the most effective coolant because it cooled down the most and warmed up the least. The result from this experiment can be used in real life in many ways. One example is a PC. If your PC overheats too much, it can make whatever game you're playing crash. To prevent this problem, you would need an effective coolant to cool down your computer, but the coolant cannot be toxic, or else if a leak occurs, it could be fatal. The experiment can apply to this situation because in certain PCs, liquid coolants are used to cool down the system. Our experiment proposes that isopropyl alcohol should be used as a coolant in a gaming system that uses liquid coolant based on the experiment's results. Another example is your AC. Your AC needs an effective coolant to function properly, but it cannot be toxic, or else anyone in the house could be harmed by the coolant if a leak occurs. This experiment shows that isopropyl alcohol would be best for an AC based on the results. Here's the bibliography for our research. This shows all the sources that we used for the experiment, such as propylene glycol and isopropyl alcohol, and the safety guidelines.